The warning lights flashed red across the Centaurian Defense Fleet's command center. Admiral Quan Ho stood before the massive holographic display, his forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the impossible readings. Where Earth's solar system should have been, there was nothing but empty space. "Run the scan again," he ordered, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years in deep space command. The young communications officer, Yuna, worked frantically at her console. Her tentacles moved across the controls with practiced precision, but her large eyes showed confusion. "Sir, I've run it 12 times, same result every time. Complete absence of matter, energy, or gravitational signatures at coordinates 127.43.89. The human solar system is gone." Quan Ho felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief was the strongest. For the past decade, humanity had been the biggest headache in galactic politics. They expanded too fast, fought too hard, and refused to follow the established rules that had kept peace among the stars for thousands of years. Their military technology advanced at an alarming rate, and their diplomatic style was aggressive and unpredictable. Any debris field? Energy residue? Anything that might explain what happened? "Nothing, sir. It's like they were never there." The bridge crew worked in tense silence. These were experienced officers who had seen strange things in deep space. But a complete solar system vanishing was beyond their understanding. Stars didn't just disappear. Planets didn't simply stop existing. Yet the sensors told a clear story. Where 9 planets and 1 star had orbited for billions of years, there was now perfect vacuum. Captain Minho's face appeared on the communication screen, his scaled features showing obvious satisfaction. The Vegan Trade Consortium had been locked in territorial disputes with humans for years. "Admiral, this is excellent news for galactic stability. Our merchant fleets can finally use the Orion trade routes without human interference." More reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Altarian Empire confirmed the disappearance from their own sensor networks. The Crystalline Collective, who rarely spoke to other species, sent a brief message of confirmation. Even the mysterious shadow traders, who dealt in information and secrets, had nothing to offer about humanity's fate. Dr. Jiwan from the Altarian Science Division sent her preliminary analysis. Her insect-like features appeared concerned as she spoke from her laboratory. "Admiral, no known technology in our databases could achieve this level of complete removal. Nuclear weapons leave radiation, black holes leave gravitational distortion, stellar collapse leaves neutron stars or other remnants. This is different. It's like someone used an eraser on reality itself." Quan Ho walked to the observation deck, looking out at the stars through the reinforced transparisteel. In his long career, he had seen species rise and fall. He had witnessed wars, plagues, and natural disasters, but he had never seen anything like this complete vanishing. His aide, Lieutenant Do-hyun, approached with additional reports. "Sir, we're receiving celebration messages from 17 different species. The Peaceful Meditation Alliance says they're planning a galaxy-wide festival. The Resource Extraction Coalition is already sending ships to claim former human territories." The Admiral nodded slowly. Humanity had made many enemies during their rapid expansion into space. They had a talent for disrupting carefully balanced political situations. Their scientists made breakthrough discoveries that threatened established trade monopolies. Their military forces used tactics that other species considered either brilliant or completely insane. "What about the human colonies outside their home system?" Quan Ho asked. "All abandoned, sir. Every human settlement, research station, and military outpost has been evacuated. No signs of struggle or forced evacuation. They just left everything behind and vanished." This was the most puzzling aspect. If humanity had faced some catastrophic threat, surely they would have sent distress signals. If they had developed new technology to relocate their entire species, why leave behind valuable resources and strategic positions? Yuna's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Admiral, incoming priority message from Galactic Council Central Command." The holographic display shifted to show High Counselor Vaex, whose ancient features had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. "Admiral Quan Ho, the Council has reviewed all available data regarding the human disappearance. We are officially declaring the former human territories open for peaceful colonization. However, we advise caution when examining any technology they left behind. Understood, High Counselor. What's our next course of action? Standard protocols for abandoned space. Catalog any remaining resources, establish monitoring stations, and begin peaceful transition of former human worlds to species better suited for long-term stability. As the communication ended, Quan Ho felt that strange mix of emotions again. The galaxy would certainly be more peaceful without humanity's chaotic influence. Trade would flow more smoothly. Diplomatic negotiations would be more predictable. The constant threat of human military innovation would no longer keep other species awake at night. But something bothered him about the complete nature of their disappearance. In his experience, when something seemed too convenient, it usually was. Humanity had never done anything the easy way. They had never simply given up when faced with impossible odds. For them to vanish so completely, so quietly, seemed entirely unlike their nature. He made a mental note to keep monitoring the empty coordinates where Earth had been. Something told him this story wasn't over. 3 years had passed since humanity vanished, and the galaxy had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Commander Do-hyun stood on the observation deck of the occupied human research station, watching cargo ships load the last of the abandoned equipment. The station had been one of humanity's most advanced facilities, but now it served as a supply depot for the Altarian Empire. The humans left behind some interesting technology, reported Engineer Sora, her blue skin glowing softly in the artificial light. She held a strange device that had taken their scientists months to understand. Their computers worked differently than ours, more creative, less logical. But their weapons? She shook her head. Their weapons were designed by people who thought about war very differently. Do-hyun nodded as he watched the final transport ship disappear into hyperspace. 17 former human worlds now belonged to the Altarian Empire. 23 more had been claimed by the Vegan Trade Consortium. The galaxy's major powers had divided human space like a feast, each taking what they needed most. The Peaceful Meditation Alliance had established beautiful garden worlds where humans once built factories. The Resource Extraction Coalition stripped former human mining operations for rare metals. Even the mysterious shadow traders had claimed a few systems, though nobody knew what they wanted with empty space. Everything is running so smoothly now, Sora continued, packing the last of the human devices into a container. No more surprise attacks on our trade convoys. No more humans showing up at diplomatic meetings with crazy new proposals. The galaxy feels peaceful. But that peace was about to end. Captain Hyunwoo commanded the exploration ship Distant Echo, one of dozens of vessels mapping the galaxy's outer rim. His crew had discovered something that made no sense according to their understanding of galactic history. The structure they found was massive beyond imagination, built from materials that their scanners couldn't identify. "It's not natural," reported his science officer, Dr. Minji, her voice filled with wonder and fear. "This construction is artificial, but it's older than any known civilization. The energy readings are strange, like it's sleeping." The structure looked like a twisted metal flower, thousands of kilometers across. Its surface was covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. When they tried to scan it with their most powerful sensors, the equipment malfunctioned. When they sent a probe to collect samples, the probe simply disappeared. "Captain," called Communications Officer Jinwoo, "we're receiving similar reports from other exploration ships. The Starseeker found something like this near the Veil Nebula. The Deep Current discovered 3 of them in the empty quarter. These things are everywhere on the galactic rim." Hyunwoo ordered his ship to maintain a safe distance while they studied the structure. But safe was a relative term when dealing with technology they couldn't understand. The longer they observed, the more convinced he became that this thing was not just ancient, it was waiting. Back at Galactic Council headquarters, Dr. Nari presented her findings to a room full of worried officials. Her research team had been studying the strange structures for 6 months, and her conclusions were disturbing. "These constructs appear throughout galactic history," she explained, pointing to holographic displays of ancient star charts. Every few million years, deep space explorers report finding them. Then the reports stop. The explorers never return, and eventually, people forget about the structures until someone discovers them again. High Counselor Vaex, whose species had one of the longest recorded histories in the galaxy, looked troubled. You're suggesting these things are cyclical? That they activate periodically? I'm suggesting something worse, Dr. Nari replied. I think they're not just cyclical. I think they're reactive. Something wakes them up. The first disappearances started 3 weeks later. The exploration ship Bright Path was investigating one of the structures when their transmission cut off mid-sentence. Search and rescue teams found nothing. No debris, no emergency beacons, no trace that the ship had ever existed. Then the Starseeker vanished while studying a different structure. Then the deep current. Within a month, every ship that had gotten too close to the ancient constructs was gone. The structures began to change. Sensors detected increasing energy outputs. The twisted metal surfaces started to glow with an inner light. Most disturbing of all, they began to move, slowly rotating and extending new sections like mechanical organisms waking from a long sleep. Captain Yunji commanded one of the last research vessels in the Outer Rim. Her orders were to observe from maximum safe distance and report any changes. What she saw made her blood freeze. The structures weren't just waking up, they were building things. "Command, this is the Silent Wind," she transmitted on emergency frequencies. "The constructs are manufacturing vessels of some kind. Large vessels, military configuration. I count hundreds of them, maybe thousands." Her science officer, Dr. Hayen, worked frantically at her console. "Captain, I'm detecting massive power buildups throughout the structure network. Whatever these things are planning, it's happening soon." That night, Lieutenant Sang-hoon was monitoring communications across the galaxy when he heard something that chilled him to his core. It was just a whisper of transmission, too faint for the automatic systems to catch, but his enhanced hearing picked it up. "They're stirring," the voice said. "They're awake. The Devourers are coming." The galaxy's 3 years of peace were about to end, and something told him that humanity's disappearance had been more than just coincidence. As reports of the awakening structures spread throughout civilized space, one question haunted every thinking being. Had the humans known this was coming? The first attack came without warning. Admiral Quan Ho watched his sensor displays in horror as the things that emerged from the ancient structures moved through space like a dark tide. They called themselves Nothing. The galaxy's survivors would later name them the Devourers. These were not ships in any sense that civilized species understood. They were massive, living machines that consumed matter and energy, growing larger and more powerful with everything they destroyed. Their hulls shifted and changed like liquid metal, reforming to counter any weapon fired at them. "All ships, attack formation Delta 7, Quan Ho ordered, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. The Centaurian Defense Fleet had never faced defeat. Their technology was among the most advanced in the galaxy. Their tactics had been perfected over centuries of warfare. None of it mattered. The Devourers moved through his battle formations like they were made of paper. Their weapons didn't fire energy beams or projectiles. They simply touched other ships, and those ships ceased to exist. The matter that had been a proud warship became part of the Devourer's mass, making it larger and deadlier. "Admiral, the Lai flagship Eternal Victory is gone," reported Communications Officer Yuna, her voice breaking. "No explosion, no debris. It just dissolved." Quan Ho watched in stunned silence as his fleet of 300 ships was reduced to scrap metal in less than an hour. The few vessels that escaped did so only because the Devourers were busy consuming the wreckage of their fallen comrades. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out repeatedly. The proud Altarian Empire's golden fleets were turned into raw materials. The Vegan Trade Consortium's merchant marines simply vanished as the Devourers consumed entire trade routes. Species that had ruled star systems for thousands of years found themselves refugees in a matter of days. Captain Seojun commanded the last evacuation fleet from the Altarian capital world. His cargo holds were packed with survivors, Not just Altarians, but members of dozens of species who had fled to their world seeking protection. Now that protection was gone, the entire Altair system is being consumed, he reported to anyone still listening on the emergency channels. The Devourers aren't just destroying planets, they're taking them apart piece by piece, converting the matter into more of themselves. Through his ship's rear cameras, Seogen watched as the beautiful crystal cities of Altair Prime were dissolved into gray sludge, which then formed into new Devourer constructs. The process was systematic and terrifying. They didn't waste anything. Every atom became part of their growing swarm. Dr. Nari had managed to establish a hidden research station in an asteroid field, hoping to study the Devourers from a safe distance. What she discovered made the situation even more hopeless. Emergency. Broadcast to all surviving vessels, she transmitted on all frequencies. I've analyzed the Devourer technology. They operate on principles we don't understand. Their hulls exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our weapons can't hurt them, because we're only hitting one layer of their existence. She paused to check her instruments as a patrol of Devourers passed dangerously close to her hiding spot. But there's something else. I've traced their activation pattern. These machines have been dormant for millions of years. Something woke them up exactly 3 years ago. The timing matches perfectly with humanity's disappearance. Before she could elaborate, her transmission cut to static. The Devourers had found her station. The galactic government collapsed within weeks. High Council worlds that had stood for millennia became feeding grounds for the mechanical swarm. Ancient species that had survived ice ages, stellar catastrophes, and countless wars were extinct in a matter of months. Commander Jinwoo led a refugee fleet of mixed species through the Outer Rim, desperately searching for somewhere safe. His ships contained the last survivors of a dozen civilizations, crystalline collective members whose song speech had fallen silent, shadow traders whose secrets meant nothing against creatures that consumed knowledge itself, peaceful meditation, monks whose philosophy offered no defense against pure destruction. We've lost contact with the core worlds, reported Navigator Heian, her usually calm voice shaking. The Devourers have consumed the galactic capital. The emergency government on Sanctuary Station lasted 3 days before they were overrun. As Jinwoo studied star charts looking for any system the Devourers might have missed, he couldn't stop thinking about the humans. Their disappearance had seemed like good news at the time. Now it felt like the worst possible omen. "Commander," said Dr. Taehyun, the fleet's senior scientist, "I've been thinking about the timing. The humans vanished right before this started. What if they knew? What if they detected the Devourers waking up? Then why didn't they warn us?" asked Medical Officer Sora. "Maybe they tried," Taehyun replied quietly. "Maybe we were too busy celebrating their disappearance to listen." The refugee fleet found temporary shelter in an abandoned mining system, but everyone knew it wouldn't last long. The Devourers were systematic in their consumption. They would find every hiding place, consume every world until nothing remained but empty space and their ever-growing swarm. Lieutenant Sang-hoon monitored the emergency frequencies, hoping to hear from other survivors. Instead, he heard something that made his heart race. It was faint, almost lost in the static, but unmistakably artificial, a signal pattern that seemed familiar. "Commander," he called out, his voice filled with desperate hope. "I'm picking up something strange. It might be nothing, but this signal pattern, it looks human." For the first time in months, the bridge crew allowed themselves to hope. If the humans were still alive, if they had somehow survived their mysterious disappearance, maybe they could help. Maybe the galaxy's darkest hour wasn't its final one. The human ships appeared without warning, materializing in star systems across the galaxy like ghosts stepping out of the void. Captain Yunji, commanding one of the last refugee convoys, stared at her sensors in disbelief. The vessel that had just emerged from hyperspace bore no resemblance to the crude human ships she remembered from 3 years ago. This was something else entirely. The ship was massive, easily 3 times larger than the biggest Altarian dreadnought. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, but unlike the chaotic appearance of the Devourers, this movement was elegant and purposeful. Energy readings from the vessel made her instruments struggle to find a proper scale. Captain? Called Communications Officer Jahoon, his voice filled with wonder. I'm not detecting any transmissions from that ship. No radio signals, no quantum communications, nothing. It's completely silent. Before Unji could respond, the space around them exploded into battle. A pack of devourers had been hunting her convoy for days, and now they struck. The mechanical creatures moved like predators, their shifting hulls gleaming as they prepared to consume another group of survivors. The human ship moved to intercept them. What happened next defied everything Unji knew about space combat. The human vessel didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, reality itself seemed to bend around it. Space twisted and folded, creating impossible angles that hurt to look at. The devourers, which had been unstoppable for months, suddenly found themselves trapped in bubbles of distorted space-time. My readings are impossible, whispered Dr. Hayan from her science station. That ship is manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe. Gravity, electromagnetic fields, even time itself. This isn't advanced technology. This is something completely beyond our understanding. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it ended, the devourers were gone. Not destroyed, but somehow unraveled at the molecular level. The human ship hung motionless in space for a moment, then vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Similar encounters were happening throughout the galaxy. Admiral Sang-hoon, leading another group of survivors, witnessed a single human vessel eliminate an entire devourer swarm that had been consuming a star system. The humans fought with perfect coordination across impossible distances, appearing wherever the mechanical creatures struck. They're not talking to each other, reported Lieutenant Mina, monitoring all communication frequencies. No orders, no tactical discussions, no coordination signals. It's like they share a single mind. The human ships moved through space in ways that violated known physics. They appeared and disappeared at will, traveled faster than light without using hyperspace, and seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Their weapons operated on principles that made the galaxy's greatest scientists weep with frustration. Dr. Young-soo, observing from a hidden research station, tried to understand what he was seeing. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases, he recorded in his notes. These ships don't just use advanced technology. They seem to rewrite the laws of physics around them. The most disturbing aspect was the humans' behavior. They offered no explanations, no communications, no acknowledgement of the other species they were saving. They simply appeared, eliminated devourer forces with ruthless efficiency, and vanished without a word. Commander Tae-hyun attempted to establish contact with a human vessel that had just saved his fleet. Human ship, this is Commander Tae-hyun of the Galactic Refugee Fleet. Thank you for your assistance. Please respond. Silence. Human vessel, we need to coordinate our efforts. The galaxy is dying. We must work together. Still nothing. The human ship completed its mission and disappeared, leaving Taehyun's people alive but ignored. It was as if the humans no longer considered other species worthy of conversation. The tide of war turned within weeks. The devourers, which had seemed unstoppable, found themselves outmatched by human technology that operated beyond their understanding. The mechanical creatures that had consumed entire civilizations were systematically hunted down and eliminated. Captain Sora witnessed the final battle above the former galactic capital. Thousands of devourer constructs had gathered there, preparing for some massive operation. They had grown enormous by consuming entire star systems, each one the size of a small moon. The humans arrived with a fleet of just 12 ships. The battle was over in minutes. The human vessels moved through the devourer swarm like dancers, their weapons creating cascading failures in the mechanical creature's existence. One by one, the devourers simply stopped existing, their matter returning to ordinary space debris. How is this possible? Sora whispered, watching impossible displays of power. 3 years ago, the humans could barely match our technology. Now they're doing things that shouldn't be possible. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Hyunwoo, studying the wreckage of ancient structures on the galactic rim, discovered records left by the original builders. The symbols that had hurt to look at directly were actually warnings, written in mathematics that transcended language. The Devourers were guards, he transmitted to the remaining survivors. They were designed to eliminate any species that might threaten something even worse. But the humans found a way past them. They didn't just advance their technology. They transformed themselves into something that the Devourers couldn't recognize as a threat. As the last Devourer fell silent, the human ships gathered in empty space. For a moment they hung motionless, like mourners at a funeral. Then, one by one, they vanished into whatever dimension they now called home. The galaxy was saved, but at a price no one had expected. Humanity had returned, but they were no longer human in any sense that other species could understand. 6 months after the last Devourer fell silent, the galaxy began to understand that everything had changed forever. Earth appeared in its original coordinates one morning, as suddenly as it had vanished 3 years before. But the blue world that had once been home to billions of simple humans was now something else entirely. Admiral Quan Ho, his once proud fleet reduced to a handful of battered ships, stared at the transformed solar system through his observation screen. Massive structures surrounded Earth, rings of metal and energy that dwarfed the largest space stations ever built. The moon had been converted into some kind of facility that pulsed with power readings his instruments couldn't measure. "Sir?" reported Communications Officer Yuna, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm detecting construction throughout the entire system. Every planet, every asteroid, even the gas giants have been modified." Mars glowed with artificial light, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Jupiter's moons had been arranged in perfect mathematical formations. Even the sun itself seemed different, its output carefully controlled, and channeled through devices that existed in dimensions his sensors couldn't reach. The most disturbing discovery was the ships. Thousands of them orbited Earth in precise formations, each one larger and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever produced. They moved in perfect silence, their hulls shifting between states of matter as if the concepts of solid and liquid no longer applied to them. "Attempt communication," Quan Ho ordered, though he already knew what the response would be. "Human vessels, this is Admiral Quan Ho of the Centaurian Defense Fleet. We wish to establish diplomatic contact. Please respond." For 3 hours they waited, then finally a response came. The voice was calm, polite, and completely emotionless. "Admiral Quan Ho, we acknowledge your presence. Continue your reconstruction efforts. We will monitor the situation for future threats." That was all. No explanation for their transformation. No discussion of the Devourer War. No acknowledgement that the galaxy had spent months dying while they were gone. Just a simple statement that they would monitor things. "Sir," Yuna said carefully, "should I ask about their disappearance? About what they did during those 3 years?" Quan Ho shook his head. Something in that voice told him that humans no longer felt the need to explain themselves to anyone. They had transcended beyond the need for galactic politics or diplomacy. Captain Taehyun commanded one of the refugee fleets trying to resettle survivors on habitable worlds. His ships carried members of dozens of species, the scattered remnants of civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Now they were homeless, dependent on human mercy they weren't sure they would receive. "The humans aren't stopping our settlement efforts," reported Navigator Sora, "but they're not helping either. It's like they're watching us from a great distance, making sure we don't break anything important." The new reality became clear as months passed. Humanity had returned not as members of the galactic community, but as its guardians. They appeared wherever they chose, observed what they wanted, and ignored any attempts at meaningful contact. Their technology operated on principles that made the galaxy's greatest scientists feel like children playing with simple tools. Dr. Youngsu, one of the few researchers still trying to understand what had happened, made a disturbing discovery while studying the ruins left by the Devourers. Hidden in the ancient records was information about humanity's true journey during their 3-year absence. They didn't just disappear, he recorded in his private notes, knowing that human observers might be listening. They found something, In the spaces between galaxies, there are things that make the Devourers look like harmless insects. The humans encountered them and somehow negotiated. The evidence was subtle, but undeniable. The Devourers had been just the first test. Somewhere in the cosmic void, ancient intelligences watched the galaxy's development, sending mechanical servants to eliminate species that grew too dangerous. Humanity had not only survived that test, they had impressed their examiners. Commander Jinwoo, leading a scientific expedition to study one of the abandoned Devourer constructs, discovered the final piece of the puzzle. Deep in the machine's memory banks was a message, left by whatever intelligence had created them. Species designation, human. Status, elevated. Threat level, cosmic guardian. Recommendation, grant unrestricted access to higher dimensional technologies. Monitor for compliance with galactic protection protocols. The galaxy's survivors slowly realized the truth. Humanity had been recruited. During their 3-year absence, they had been transformed into something beyond ordinary biological life. Cosmic guardians tasked with protecting their home galaxy from threats that existed between the stars. Lieutenant Mina, monitoring deep space communications, picked up fragments of transmissions that confirmed everyone's worst fears. The humans were already detecting new threats, things moving in the darkness between galaxies that made the Devourers seem simple by comparison. "They're preparing for something bigger," she reported to her commander. "The orbital constructs around Earth aren't just defensive, they're manufacturing facilities. They're building a fleet for a war that hasn't started yet." The galaxy's other species tried to return to their old ways of life, but everything felt different now. Trade routes reopened, governments reformed, and colonies were re-established. But everyone knew they were living under protection they hadn't earned and couldn't understand. Admiral Quan Ho, now elderly and wise, published his final report on the human situation. "We thought they were our equals," he wrote. "We celebrated when they disappeared, believing the galaxy would be more peaceful without them. We were fools. They didn't disappear. They graduated. Now they stand guard against horrors we cannot imagine, and we should be grateful they still remember us fondly enough to keep us safe." In the depths of space, human ships continued their silent patrol, watching for signs of the greater darkness that lurked beyond the stars.